So good morning, everybody. Welcome to this session on cybersecurity with Andrew Limberis from GTA Computers and Network Solutions. I'm sure you can ask Andrew many questions. Andrew will start the presentation. Andrew, one question for you. Do you want me to moderate the chat and just take questions as they come and let you know about them? Or would you want them to be held to the end?
Yeah, no, I'd say let's go moderate during the presentation. I'd
Perfect.
rather go through it while the material's there too. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I will hand over to you. Thank you, everybody. I'm sure this is going to be a great session of making sure we're all have ourselves covered for being in business.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Teresa. I really appreciate that. So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. So who is this presentation for? Well, this presentation is for basically everyone because cybersecurity applies to everybody. But what the goal of this presentation is to do is to provide valuable insights and practical guidance on the world of cybersecurity. All right, so just a bit about myself. My name is Andrew, as Teresa said. I've been in the industry for over 25 years. I've worked with many different companies in dealing with cybersecurity, networking, computers, basically all facets of IT. However, I specialize in medical IT, protecting patient records and building systems that scale and support many different industries. And of course, my presentation can't be complete without showing my boys. So the one on the right is Lucas, my oldest. He is 8 years old now. And the one on the left is Carson. He is 6 years old. And they're the reason why I do what I do. All right, so let's get right into this. So here's the table of contents for the presentation. What we're going to be covering is an introduction to cybersecurity. So in order to protect yourselves and your business, you're going to have to understand what it is, where it came from, and why we need to protect ourselves. We're going to also go through cyber threats, vulnerabilities and exploits. We're going to cover what they are and what kind of threats will you have for your business. The next is how to protect your business against these cyber threats and vulnerabilities. And then we're going to talk a bit about planning, which is one of the most important things. You need to plan your strategies so that you can ensure that you are secure and safe for your business. So we're going to dig right in. So cybersecurity, we're going to cover what is cybersecurity, the evolution of cyber threats, types of cyber threats, vulnerabilities and exploits. Those are the things we're going to cover today. All right. So what is cybersecurity? So if you don't mind, could I get everyone put a 1 in the chat if you know what cybersecurity is, or a 2 in the chat if you don't know what cybersecurity is? I'll give you guys a minute to do that. I like that, 1.5. That's good. Okay, that's good. All right, that's good to hear. Oh, 3, I like the 3. Okay, perfect. Thanks so much. So that's great. So everyone has a basic understanding, which is good to hear. We're going to cover it anyways, though. So let's continue on. So cybersecurity, it's basically the act of securing your computers and networks from intruders. Your company data is extremely important. Whether you design products, you're in manufacturing, or basically you sell different things, your data is extremely important. So if a hacker gets that data and basically converts your business or sells it to somebody else, then essentially your company could go out of business. Because if someone's doing the same thing, stealing your secrets, your trade secrets, they could put you out of business. So that's why your data is extremely important. And also, some people even say to me, hey, cybersecurity can't be that important. I don't store any data. I don't have anything in the cloud. I don't have anything on my computer. Well, let me tell you, cybersecurity is still important for those people. And the reason being is that when you log onto a website, you do your banking, so you're typing the information into a computer. So anything you're even typing into a computer can be hacked and is valuable to you as well. Okay, so let's go through the evolution of cybersecurity. So in order to have a good understanding, you need to know what's going on in the industry and why things are happening. So back before 1970s, when systems came out, the nice thing was there was no user passwords, no usernames. Everything was just available to everyone. Now, unfortunately with that, because things were available, people were going in, they were changing things on people, so that you create a document and they'd go in and change it on you, and you'd be concerned because now you don't have the same document. So this is why in 1970s, the first concept of computer security emerges with basic passwords and system controls. So that way you can say who can access what. In the 1980s, the first computer virus arrived. It was called the Elk virus. And this computer virus basically took over a lot of systems back then. And back then, because of that virus, the Computer Emergency Response Team was established, which is CERT. That's most people know these days. In the 1990s, was a big time as well for most people, especially me, because the internet was adopted. So that's when all computers now are connected to everything. So because of that, you need to protect yourself a little bit better by using firewalls and antivirus software. That was also introduced in the 1990s. And then on top of that, when you communicate over the internet, text or your data was sent via text. So if anyone was snooping on the line, they could actually see what you were sending. So this is also why SSL encryption was first introduced in the 1990s. So in the 2000s, cyber attacks became more sophisticated with worms, which we'll cover later on. Also, regulatory frameworks such as HIPAA, Sarbanes-Oxley address data protection. They finally saw how important data was and why we need to protect it. Another certification that came out was Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, PCI DSS, was also introduced. This protects basically anyone who stores credit card information. So if you're selling any products or online data for any payment processing, this will apply to you. In 2010, cloud computing came out. And so cloud computing introduced a whole nother set of security challenge, because the communication between your office and your cloud computing resources became more of a challenge. Also in 2010, people started bringing their own devices, which I can tell you, for an IT guy, that's a nightmare for me, because how do you control everyone's device that you don't own? Then in 2013, the Target Corporation experienced a significant data breach, which really raised awareness for cybersecurity. 2016, the Mariah botnet that attacked hundreds of thousands of computers using the Internet of Things devices. 2017, the WannaCry ransomware attack. This is when ransomware really started to evolve and hurt a lot of people and businesses. It affected hundreds of thousands of computers worldwide, which really emphasized the importance of regular software updates and patches. In the 2020s, a zero trust architecture gained popularity, because basically even they saw popular software vendors were getting hacked. And so you can't trust any software even. You have to know where your software is coming from. And also in 2020s, the AI and machine learning are becoming a very important part of any security posture. Next, they also focus on the GDPR and CCPA. So now in the future, where are we going with cybersecurity? Well, essentially, we're using we're looking at quantum resistance cryptography. So at the moment, all cryptography, or all things that are encrypted and secured by encryption, can't be broken because of the technology we have. When quantum computers come out, unfortunately, that technology will be rendered useless. So we'll have to look at a quantum resistant cryptography to protect our data. Also, we're looking at greater AI integration. So antivirus software will use AI to inspect different things in your computer to ensure you're protected. Also, we definitely need to look at the regulations to address emerging threats. So let's get back into this. So what are the threats to my business? Well, there are 4 different kinds of threats. There are malware, which is viruses, worms, ransomware; phishing attacks, which DDoS attacks; and social engineering. So what is malware? Malware is software that is designed to harm or exploit computer systems, networks, and users, and also gain unauthorized access to your systems. So viruses are programs that replicate and spread to other files on a computer. They often come in an executable format, so a file that you can click on and run. And these viruses will sometimes gain access to, allow attackers to gain access to your computer. They'll allow them to change files on the computer or even destroy your computer. And next is worms. So worms are self-replicating programs that spread across networks and can infect multiple computers without any user intervention. Trojans. Trojans create essentially a backdoor on your computer. So if you run a Trojan on your computer, it creates a backdoor allowing hackers to gain access to your computer so they can steal your data. They can connect anytime they want and see what you're doing. Ransomware. So ransomware is very popular these days. I'm sure everyone's heard of it. It encrypts files on a victim's system. And then what they do is they pop a message on your screen saying, hey, if you want to access your files ever again, you need to send us money and we'll send you the decryption key for it. The next is spyware. Spyware has been around for a long time. What it does is basically it just watches what you do on your computer. It can collect login credentials and your sensitive data and send it to other organizations or attackers. The next, one of my least favorite, is adware. So adware, basically what it does is an application that puts advertisements on your screen all the time. I don't know about you, but I hate seeing advertisements. Another one is botnets. So botnets are networks of infected computers that are often controlled by a single entity, which is called a bot master. These networks can be used to carry out coordinated attacks, send spam, or perform other malicious activities. Rootkits. Rootkits is software that allow unauthorized access to a server, excuse me, or a computer system. And so this allows an attacker to gain full access into your systems, and they can connect, change anything. They've got full access to your system. All right, phishing attacks. So phishing attacks basically attack the human element. It comes in many forms, such as email messages, deceptive content. So they send you like an email with a source of urgency saying, hey, your daughter or your cousin is in jail now. Please send money to get them out immediately. Or from your boss would send an email to you saying, hey, I need an e-transfer right away of $500,000 sent to this address. Please go ahead and do it. It's very important, right? Or they also take you to fake websites where you can enter different credentials. They can log into your email, things like that. So spear phishing. Spear phishing is exactly what I just described. It's a targeted attack on specific individuals or organizations, often using information about you. So they'll know your email, they'll know your boss's name, they'll know things like that. So it comes through email, could be through just fake websites. Those are the primary means that we're seeing these days. The next is phishing, which is a phishing attack that's conducted over the phone. So I don't know about you, but I always get phone calls about duct cleaning. I can't seem to get rid of them, but I always hear about duct cleaning. So what they do is they say, hey, let's book you in for an appointment for duct cleaning. And then what they do is give me your credit card number. So, okay, now they got your credit card number and game over. Smishing. So smishing is phishing attacks that is conducted over SMS or text messaging. These are not as popular, but I do see that with Instagram. What happens is they send you a text message saying, hey, you need to update your password. So you click on it, update your password, and now they have full access to your Instagram account. DDoS attacks. So DDoS attack stands for distributed denial of service attack. It's a malicious attempt to disrupt the normal functioning of a network, service, or website, but overwhelming it with a flood of internet traffic. So this is where botnets come into place. So attackers will use a botnet, which has hundreds of thousands of devices, to send traffic or even garbage to your website or to even your firewall. And so when it sends that garbage to it, your firewall can only handle a certain amount of traffic because of this memory issues, CPU. There's a lot of physical constraints as well for that. So what happens is when all this garbage attacks and hits your firewall, basically it goes, but I can't handle this, and crashes, or it stops responding to traffic. So traffic now that you want to go through for your business, such as your customers, suppliers, can't get through. Now your hardware, everything is still okay. There's no real damage to it, but they've now disrupted your business. Attacks could last up to a week. I've seen one of my servers being attacked for up to 4 days before, and it's not fun, trust me. So like in regards to this, in 2017, one of the biggest DDoS attacks took place in September 2017, and it targeted Google services, and it reached the size of 2.54 terabytes a second, which is still on record the highest we've ever seen. Another one in 2016, DNS provider got taken down, and it took down Amazon, PayPal, Netflix, Airbnb. Basically, I would say 3/4 of the internet was down when that happened. Social engineering. So what is social engineering? It's basically a form of manipulation that exploits human psychology to deceive individuals or organizations into divulging confidential information, perform actions, providing access to sensitive systems. It's the human element of it. So it could be in any form. They'll call you, they'll email you and say, hey, I need you to do something for me. It's very like phishing, very, very similar to phishing. I need you to please look at the back of your keyboard and tell me your password. Or, hey, I'm calling from the accounting department and I need you to give me access to this file. So it allows you, gets you to perform actions and do things. So that's what social engineering is. All right, vulnerabilities and exploits. So we're going to look at different software vulnerabilities, human vulnerabilities, as well as look at zero-day exploits. So what are vulnerabilities and exploits? So vulnerabilities, first off, is a weakness or a flaw or error found within a program system that has a potential to be leveraged by a hacker. So unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but humans make the code for everything. And so we make mistakes sometimes. And so when there's a mistake, hackers can use this mistake to gain access to your system or software. So operating systems, software can have bugs in it, just like I said. So operating systems, server software, any accounting software, anything can have a bug in it. That's why it's extremely important to patch your software and keep things up to date so that we can fix that. So exploits. Exploits, basically, what an exploit is it's a piece of software that's used by hackers to take advantage of vulnerabilities. So what they do to make it easier for everyone, they'll actually put the software together and then say it attacks a bug in the accounting software. So now they'll sell this exploit to other hackers so that everyone can just basically point and click with their mouse, and now it's so easy to hack into your accounting software, for instance. And that's why it's used by hackers. Software vulnerabilities. So software vulnerabilities is weaknesses or flaws in a computer program application that can be exploited by attackers to compromise the security of a system. When exploited, software vulnerabilities can lead to unauthorized access, data breaches, system crashes, or other security incidents. So it's extremely important to keep your software up to date. Human vulnerabilities. So social engineering, just like we discussed earlier. With human vulnerabilities, you need to be aware. You need to have a good understanding of what's going on. That's why I highly suggest getting security training. Zero-day exploits. Now, these are extremely hard to protect from. So zero-day exploit refers to a cyber attack that takes advantage of a previously known vulnerability in software hardware that we just discussed. However, the term zero-day comes from the fact that developers have had 0 days to address and patch the flaw, as it becomes known to the public or attackers before the software vendor has had a chance to release a fix or update. So basically, when a zero-day vulnerability comes out, it means that a hacker or another company has found a problem in the code, and the developers or whoever makes the software is unable to fix that before everyone knows about it. So that's a huge problem. So if an attacker knows about an issue, but it hasn't been fixed and there is no fix, how do you protect against that? It's extremely difficult. So now that you have a good understanding of the different threats that will go after your business, let's go over how can I actually protect my business. So these are the recommendations that we'll cover. I would always go ahead and perform what's called a security risk assessment, We'll update security policies and procedures. So it's important to have these in your business. Implement network security, update endpoint security, create an incident response plan, and adhere to regulatory requirements, perform your security awareness training, and perform penetration testing. So, perform a security risk assessment. This is always the first step that we recommend for all businesses. What this does is basically it assesses and gives you an inventory of all the equipment data you have. So it identifies and catalogs all information assets, including hardware, software, data, networks, and personal information. And what this does, it allows us to identify where potential security threats may be. So that's why we do next threat identification. So we look through this data and we will identify the potential cyber threats that could target your information based upon the assets that you have. The next we do is we perform what's called a risk analysis. So a risk analysis, oh, sorry, I missed a step. We do a vulnerability assessment. My apologies. We identify in a vulnerability assessment, we identify and assess vulnerabilities in systems. So now that we know what software you're running, what databases you're running, what sort of internet connection you have, what remote access that you have, we're able to identify the vulnerabilities in your systems, applications, and networks. And so we do consider both technical vulnerabilities, which is software flaws, and non-technical vulnerabilities, which means inadequate policies as well. Next, we do a risk analysis, which analyzes the potential impact and likelihood of these risks. So we go through it to ensure and see, well, what is the likelihood of these happening? And this allows us to prioritize these different things that we need to address in your organization. So we can prioritize them based on the severity and potential consequences to your business. Then we come up with risk mitigation strategies. We develop and implement risk mitigation strategies to identify the different risks. So if you need to do software patching, or your firewall's outdated, or you have different access requirements, we'll come up with a plan that will allow you to ensure that these things are protected properly and securely. So we'll consider, so security controls assessment. So we will also go through your different security controls that you have in place. So password protections, are you using multi-factor authentication? Do you change your passwords regularly? Can you control who's accessing your data? Do you know who's accessing your data? And when are people accessing your data? So we'll evaluate the effectiveness of these security controls. We'll ensure that the security measures are implemented correctly and provide the intended protection that's required. The next will provide you with an incident response plan. So a lot of people may think that all this paperwork, there's so much paperwork here, but it's well worth it to spend the time on. An incident response plan will develop for you and test it out so that we can outline the procedures for responding and recovering from a cyber attack or even just a hardware failure. So this incident response plan will lay out basically everything about how to access things and how to restore things in an emergency. Then we're going to look at regulatory compliance. Does your business meet the regulatory compliance? So if you're a doctor's office, you have to, PIPEDA or HIPAA, you have to adhere to those. Are you storing credit card data? You have to adhere to PCI DS regulations, and that will ensure, if you're following that, that will actually add another layer of protection to your business. And then physical security, or sorry, third-party risk management. So third-party risk management means, have you actually assessed the businesses you're doing business with? How do you know the data that you're sending is secure, or the files you're sending is secure? We'll actually look at your connection to third parties that you use in your business to ensure that everything is secure, and the risks associated with that are also low. Next is physical security. Now, how do people access your environment? Can they just walk in and grab the data off the thing? Or is your servers behind a secured lock and key? How's the building access? Basically, we'll cover all the physical access to your computers, your server rooms, and your office building. And last but least, so business continuity and disaster recovery. It kind of goes hand in hand with the incident response plan, but you need to know what you have, where your backups are located, who's responsible for what, and who takes care of what. That way, when a disaster happens, you'll know how to deal with it. So, updating security policies and procedures. Now, once again, I talked about paper. People hate paper, but the reality is you need to have security policies and procedures. Number one, this will help you with your insurance. Insurance is not cheap these days. However, if you're able to provide them with your security policies and procedures for IT, they'll know that you're on your game to protect yourselves and your equipment. So that'll actually help reduce your costs and also help protect you. So what will a security policy include? Well, essentially, it'll specify the password length, password complexity, your password history, how long till you need to change it, expiry and regular changes of it, right? Account lockouts, how many times someone can try to access the password before it locks out. Are you using two-factor authentication? Secure access to storage. You got to avoid common passwords, right? That's basically some of the password controls that will put in place. As for access control, who can access data and how is it accessed? Is it logged? So you'd have to specify in this policy who can access what levels of data and where it's going to be logged and how long it's going to be logged for. Data encryption. So how is your data stored? Is your data stored in just basic files on your server? Is it in your database? And so one big thing for web applications is if you're storing your data in a database, most databases actually store the data in plain text, which means that if someone gets access to your system, they can actually look at the files without having usernames and passwords and say they can read all your data and copy it out if they're on the system like that. So that's why when I say, how is your data stored? Well, your data should be encrypted. That way, if someone breaks into that server, they can't access or read that data. If you have a laptop, if you're traveling a lot and you have proprietary data on it, you should have that laptop encrypted as well. That way, if you lose the laptop or someone gets the laptop, then you're able to recover because you know that you can write off the laptop and not worry about your data. Then patch management. You should also include when should your systems be updated and how should they be kept up to date. So for most of my customers, what I like to do is every Wednesday, I actually run all the updates at night after hours. I test them as well. And I roll them out to all the computers and servers every Wednesday night. So that way they know that, for instance, Microsoft software, when they release their patches on Patch Tuesday, which is the first Tuesday of every month, Microsoft releases their Windows updates to their systems that they know and I know on Wednesdays will automatically install those patches. That way we're covered for the rest of the week or until the next patch. So it's extremely important to patch your systems and keep things up to date. That's I would say at least 80% of the battle. All right, so another way to protect your business is you need to look at your network security, basically. So if you plug, I've seen a lot of people do this. They plug their computers directly into your Rogers modem or your Bell modem. And yeah, they have a firewall, which is okay. But as a business, you need another layer of protection. You need a firewall. Plugging your stuff right into the Rogers network, basically, or the Bell network, you have no control over what's happening. That's why when you implement a firewall, that's your device, it will protect you by allowing you to specify access controls. And so what access controls does is it states that, okay, who can come into my business network? So you can specify I only want web traffic to my web server. I want stuff to my printer, or I want file sharing to go out in and out, right? So those are different protections that it puts in place. You're also able to specify that I only want my staff to access these particular websites. They can only do certain traffic. So if they're trying to send files out, right, some businesses have very critical data. And so if their staff are trying to send data out of the network, that could possibly be an issue. So this firewall will help you protect against that. You can specify rules for your staff as well as for incoming. So it protects in both ways. Next is intrusion detection system. You need some sort of intrusion detection system on your network that will watch for normal traffic. This will ensure that there's no traffic going in and out of your network. It guarantees that only legitimate network traffic is going through. Such applications that I've used in the past, one is an open source application called Snort. It watches your network traffic on a packet level, which means that every time you send a piece of data, a packet is a little segment that is divided up. So the data gets divided up into little segments, and these segments then get sent separately over the network. And so Snort will open that segment up, check the data, ensure that it is good data. Another application we use is called Rover from SentinelOne. It will actually scan your network, watch the data going through your network, and ensure that things are running as they should. Next is how do your users connect remotely to your office? Now, not everyone uses this because they're on cloud-based computing. However, it's extremely important to protect your remote access into your network, such as using open VPNs, or you can use secure remote desktop access. So such as Screen Connect, TeamViewer. Now, the only problem with remote desktop access software is you need to rely on those companies for security. So if they get hacked, your organization could potentially put in risk. However, it's very uncommon.
Before you move on, I have a couple of questions.
Oh yeah, perfect. Sorry, I didn't see that. Go ahead.
That's okay. Elisa asks, if you're using e-commerce software, where do we find the information for the system security in terms of storing data? She's using Shopify.
So Shopify. Okay. So basically, you can, number one, you can definitely contact them and reach out, and they'll go over the data for you. Number two, they should have it in their user agreement. It should state where the data is stored, which is extremely important, how it's stored, if it's being encrypted or not, as well as what sort of regulatory compliance that they have. So Shopify would assume they need to have the PCI DSS compliance for the data credit card processing if they're doing that for you, as well as depending upon where your data is stored, there'll be different requirements. And so by looking at their user agreement, you should be able to tell where it is. And if not, you can definitely reach out to them and they have to tell you that details.
Okay. And then also she asks, does she need to take extra precautions with a software like Shopify?
It really depends upon what type of data you're putting through it. The thing is you need to understand the what's it called, the actual user agreement you have with them. I would go through that with a fine-tooth comb, and the reason being is in there it will specify what sort of requirements or responsibilities that you have as someone using the software. So that way you'll know that they legally will not be responsible if you get hacked for this, or if this gets stolen, or if any data is lost. So you really need to look at their user guide or their user agreement, and that's really where everything will be specified.
Thank you. Couple more questions.
Okay.
Jen says she has some old Mac airports and was going to try and make an intranet as a second layer of passwords and run home cameras not connected to the cloud as a guest net.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. So the only thing that I have there is that when you say old, that's my only concern. You want to make sure that you can still get updates for those products. Okay. The reason being is if you don't, there will be bugs in the products, like vulnerabilities that are available. And so when a virus comes down the network, then potentially those could be susceptible to the vulnerabilities and get hacked. I do agree, though, and I think it's a great idea that having the guest network is extremely important. When I set up networks for businesses or homes, even for that matter, what I usually do is I create 3 networks. I create your internal network for Wi-Fi so that you can use all your printers and all that together. I create a guest network So that way, when you have visitors over, it's completely isolated from internal networks. So that way people can connect, get on the internet, but they can't connect to your own personal stuff. The third is an IoT network, which is Internet of Things network. So I'll put your Google speakers, your light switches, your security cameras, things like that on that third network. And what that does is it provides the different layers of security. So that way, if you get hacked, you're still protected.
Right. Great question. Thank you. Or answer. Another couple of questions. When will physical keys finally be mainstream?
Physical keys actually, to be honest with you, they are mainstream now. Unfortunately, the limitations of them are pricing. Nobody wants to pay for it.
Yeah.
So I have, I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I'm trying to grab one now, but I use what's called a UB key, which is one of these guys here. So with a UB key, I use this to access all my servers, my email, everything. Now, the downfall to them as well is that your application provider needs to support them. So right now, I know major companies such as Google support them, and I use this to access all my emails as well. So that's what I love about the physical keys. But because of cost limitations, this key alone is about $80.
Yeah.
So to try to roll out a key to everybody is expensive. So that's why most people use the authenticator apps, which are just as secure.
Great. Thank you. Another one. Will VPNs become illegal or make you appear suspect? And aren't you just sharing your data with a second unknown entity? Your ISP will still know, as far as I understand.
Yeah. So I don't see VPNs becoming illegal. I think they will always be available in Canada and the US. As you see in other countries, they are, but that's particularly because it becomes hard to snoop data from government aspects. And so I don't see VPNs becoming illegal. But as a VPN, you're absolutely right about that. So when I refer to a VPN in a business, I refer to having a VPN direct to the firewall that's on site at your office. So what that means is you're connecting from your computer directly to your office. All your traffic now goes through the VPN, then out your internet at your office. So now you know where your traffic's going. So if you're on the road, then you rest assured all your data is protected because it's going through the VPN to your office, then to the internet. And you're right, though, if you buy one of those VPN services such as NordVPN or any other services that you can get, you're basically transmitting your data from your computer to their servers. And you're right, their servers may actually watch the data. They say they don't, but you never know. Especially in the United States and Canada, with the laws that we have, I'm sure they're able to give information to the law enforcement, because if not, they wouldn't allow them to be in business.
Yeah. And one more question. Nicole asks, why do you need an authenticator app versus just using 3-factor authentication outside of an app? Is it 2-factor or 3-factor?
Maybe if Nicole, you wouldn't mind elaborating just a little bit, if that's okay. And if not, we can definitely cover it after the talk, if that's all right too. I don't quite understand fully the question.
Okay.
Well, like if I'm with the TD, I use, 2-factor authentication where they'll send a message to my phone with
Okay.
the code. So
Okay.
why would I use an app to do the same thing?
Great question. Okay, I understand that. So the reason you would use an app or an actual physical key like this is because people have started hacking cell phones. So what they've done, it's called SIM swapping, I believe. So what they've essentially done is they can clone your SIM card. They've called your phone provider and they said, hey, I need another copy of my phone. I need to get it running again. So they'll provide them with a new SIM card. They'll put it in. And so now all text messages that come from your bank, from your email, anything will actually be sent to your phone and to their phone. So basically, if they had your password, they'll go in now and they say, okay, send me the 2-factor authentication code, which then sends to your phone. And from there, the attackers now can get that code and enter it. So that's the primary difference. So now they've hacked that. So unfortunately, on an app on your phone, it requires not only the access to your phone, but it also requires the fingerprint ID or password to get into the authenticator app. And because it's encrypted, the codes change consistently. And so because it's actually inherently more secure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Problem. Yeah, if you have more questions after, feel free to reach out. I don't mind at all.
Thank you.
Okay, so where were we here? So another thing you need to consider is you need to update your endpoint security. So you need to install proper antivirus software. And when I say proper antivirus software, I don't mean some $20 or Windows automatic defender that they have. I mean proper antivirus software that will watch the files and actually have rollback capability. So rollback capability. So for instance, I've had a customer that got ransomware. What happens is the antivirus detected it within 2 minutes and actually stopped it, eliminated it, and rolled back their files to the original version. So without rollback, they would have had to go back to their backups and they would have lost probably at least half their files already. So roll back their files so that way everything's normal. They didn't even know what happened, to be honest with you. I got a notification about it. The next is to install a good EDR or endpoint detection and response software. So an EDR is a system to gather and analyze security threat related information from computer workstations and other endpoints. The goal of it is to find security breaches as they happen and facilitate a quick response to discovered potential threats. So the EDR is another extremely important layer. So you can't just run antivirus. You need to have an EDR as well that watches for these things. So my typical EDR will notify me when a hack is happening, so I can automatically or I can manually respond to these threats and this hack. So, like I said before, an incident response plan, it stops the panic. So when you get hacked or if something happens, it stops the panic and allows an organization to respond to an incident without any troubles. It identifies who, so what staff members and contractors are required for the response and how to get in touch with them. Most importantly, you need to have your phone numbers. If you can't access your computer, how do you know who to call? What? That's why paper is good. So what? It describes your system's layout and helps identify the critical infrastructure. Can you figure out how to get back online ASAP? So it helps you get back online as soon as possible. The where, so where are your backups stored? Where are your physical servers located? Are they at a data center? Are they at your office? That way you can tell whenever this happens, you can tell whoever needs to deal with this where they are. When, so identifies an order to when people need to be contacted even. So it'll go through, okay, first the CEO, now the CFO, chief, and then now the technical officer, and then who do I contact after that? The sequential sequence, so you know exactly who to call, where to call, all their phone numbers, everything to go through. Then the how, this is very critical. The how in an incident response plan will go over how to restore your backups. So you'll have specific procedures on how to restore them. It'll identify the steps required to restore your company to full operational status and how to access the backups. Numerous times I've seen companies go, help, help. We need to get our backups going, but they don't know the passwords for it. They don't know where they're located. They don't even have the software licenses. So this also identifies the software licenses that are required even to rebuild the workstations and servers if need be. And that way, with this data, you'll be guaranteed to get your data back and your systems back online as fast as possible. So you need to adhere to regulatory compliance. So regulatory compliance such as GDPR, HIPAA, and PIPEDA, PCI DSS. So as I said before, the essential, by adhering to them, they set standards for your network security and your computer security. They essentially say, you need this type, you'll need this type of encryption when you communicate, you need to have this type of antivirus. They'll specify those different things, and they'll also specify how to handle your data. So in the medical industry, which we specialize in, basically, if you're handing your patient data out to everyone and it's easily accessible, you can't do that. So this specifies that. This also specifies the legal requirements your company has as an organization to adhere to that. So that way you're guaranteed that if you're following these, no one can really sue you. That's number one. Next is security awareness training. So security awareness training is extremely important. It educates people, your employees, so that way they have a good understanding of what's going on, what's happening, and so they understand what phishing is, they understand exploits, vulnerabilities, they even understand what's coming in as emails. So I also perform simulated phishing exercises. So typically some of my customers, I'll send them an email saying, hey, you need to reset your password. Please click here to reset your password. And I see how many people click on it. And so that way I know who has done their training. And two, I can see who needs more training. And that way it protects the staffs and my company. So that way we don't have anything to be concerned about. The next is train on best practices. So I don't know about you, but I go to places all the time and I see under a keyboard, there is passwords written on a piece of paper. Now that just kills me because anyone can walk into your office, flip your keyboard over, and there's your password. So that's why training your staff on best practices on where to keep their passwords, how to access data is very important. In such a situation, I would recommend using a software like NPass that will store the passwords in an encrypted file on your own servers, not in the cloud. All right, the next I would highly suggest is penetration testing. So this is what I do for all my customers. Every month I perform what's called a penetration test. And what that does is I check your firewalls for vulnerabilities, any changes, configuration issues. I do network scans on your system so that I have a good idea what's allowed to come into your network and what's not allowed to come into your network. When a hacker gets access, they'll usually open up what's called a port, which means that they'll allow more traffic through your network. And we detect that with penetration tests. Also the PC scan, so we scan for any potential worms, viruses, any malicious files or software that's running on your computer. And then we also provide what's called monthly reports. So at the end of every month, we provide a report with all our detailed scans, tests, everything. And that way you can have this on your record. So when insurance comes calling, if anything happens, you can say, listen, I've done my due diligence. And that's why performing the penetration test and having reports for that is extremely important. When they do these due diligence requests, you can then show that you've done everything you possibly can to protect against this. Because to be honest with you, unfortunately, no matter how much security you put in place, there's still a chance that you will get hacked. Look at Amazon getting hacked. The school board in our area got hacked a couple months ago. So it's possible. It's about having your backups, procedures, plans, and showing that you've done your due diligence. All right, so cybersecurity for personal use. So we're gonna cover implement network security, be skeptical, and update everything. There's only a few slides left. We're almost over. Hopefully I'm not boring everybody, but we'll get through it. So question everything and update everything. Verify the legitimacy of unexpected emails, messages, or requests. So basically, when you have an email come in, check the header of your email. Make sure that the to and from are legit, because I've seen where in the from field, it says it's from a legitimate person, but when you actually click on it, it says someone else at gmail.com, not at theirbusiness.com. Check your URL. So when you're about to buy something online or file a credit card payment, check the HTTP address at the top of the screen. Make sure it's legit. Click the drop down beside it to see the SSL certificate. It'll say that it's a valid certificate from the company that issued it, as well as from the actual company that you're trying to buy from. Use your two-factor authentication. Like I said, authenticator apps are the way to go if you can, or physical keys, but most people don't want to spend the money on it. So make sure you're using your two-factor authentication. Educate yourself to recognize phishing attempts and report suspicious emails. So make sure you know and have an idea of what these emails look like. Think things through before you just click on things. It's very important. And another thing, if you do detect these emails, please report these emails, because it helps other people in the system to detect them in the future. Update everything. If you don't update your computers, you will have software vulnerabilities. That's just the way it is. If you keep everything up to date, your chances of getting hacked are much lower. So, emerging technologies and trends. So what's happening in the cybersecurity field is basically AI and machine learning are becoming a huge thing in cybersecurity. It's being used a lot in a new line of security applications. Its machine learning is used to detect and mitigate threats in real time. So most antivirus and EDR software these days actually communicate with a command and control server consistently. So every minute they're sending data back and forth saying, hey, is this file okay? Hey, is this action okay? So it's good that's why AI is being used, because it's very difficult for a human being to understand what's going on. Internet of Things is a small devices that we use, such as home speakers, tablets, connected switches, and plugs. These can be compromised because, unfortunately, the security on them is not the greatest. How often do you update these? I don't know about you, but I don't even remember the last time updates have come out that said to update my products. It's pretty rare. So the fact that they're not updating that often means that they are vulnerable to attacks. The next future for AI or for security is blockchain and cybersecurity. So blockchain is emerging in the security world. It can provide advanced confidentiality and data integrity. So it's something to look forward to. It's very neat. I don't know about many people are in Bitcoin or not, but essentially it could be used for selling houses, even saying that you own products and having certificates for that. It can also provide secured private messaging and protect edge computing with authentication methods. So it's pretty interesting coming up, and I look forward to it as well. All right, so thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and everything. I've created a handout for you guys. It's called 12 Ways to Protect Yourself Against Ransomware. Ransomware is one of the most evolving threats on the planet these days, and it's one of the worst. So that's why there's this handout. So feel free to use this QR code to access it, or the website address that I put there. That'll help you basically go through the steps we've just outlined. And if you have any other questions or anything, feel free to email me and I can help you out with anything. So if there's any questions, I'd definitely be happy to help them.
I'll read some of them. Thank you. How safe is the iCloud, and what alternatives can we use?
So the iCloud is fairly safe. Challenges with it, of course, are first of all, the data stored on someone else's systems. So the problem really comes down to is that they control the data. Now, their encryption, and that is quite good, but if your phone gets hacked, that's where a lot of issues will come in place. Because your phone gets hacked and it has access to the iCloud, a lot of users will then get all their photos out on the internet. And that's how you see all the famous photos of people that don't want, or sorry, famous people's photos out there on the internet that don't want them out there. Most of the time they've been hacked through their phone to get to the cloud. And that's one of the inherent problems with it. As for fighting against that, that's extremely difficult to fight against. You can use different types of technology to store data on your own servers as well. So I just recently set up for another customer of mine. It's Synology Disk Station. And what that is the NAS that you have at your house or office, and you can actually back up all your photos from your phone to that. And it has a bit better protection and securities in place. And the nice thing is that the data is at your house and it's yours. So whether Apple changes their policies and procedures about what they do with your data, you don't have to worry about that because it's on your own system. I hope that answers that question.
We just have a few minutes because I have another session to go to.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
No what is your idea about ISO 27000?
Yeah, 27,000 is definitely worthwhile to look at. It applies more to large organizations, and it costs a lot to get.
Okay.
It is good.
What do we do when personnel forget their training? I guess remind them.
Yeah, you remind them. Basically, that's what the simulated phishing attacks are for. Yeah. That way you can identify who, and we can address that by going back over the training.
Okay. Last question. Will the use of AI be used by hackers to make threat attempts more convincing?
100%. It's actually being seen today. ChatGPT is being used by many hackers, and what they do is they actually use it to create the fake websites. It'll write the code for you even, or emails. So that was one of the problems, is when a hacker comes from another country, usually their English is not that great. And so because of that, you can see and identify these more clear. But when they use ChatGPT, it sounds like a normal person emailing you. So yes, they're already using it, unfortunately.
Yeah. Nicole says this was a lot for a small business of one. Yes. Is there an accessible start point for an entrepreneur who's on their own or only has 1 or 2 employees?
Yeah. So essentially, if the best thing to do is do a vulnerability assessment or a security assessment. That's number one. I would get that done because it ensures that everything's covered and you don't have to worry about it. Number two, just focus on your backups. always have good backups and make a backup recovery plan. I don't care how small you are, you need to know where your backups are and how you're going to cover them in an incident. That's number one. If you have those two things in place, then you should be good. This is a lot for, like you said, a small business, but the reality is this is good to have.
Okay. Chad says, I'm a small online business selling my own branded coffee. I use a third-party app to do the roasting, packing, and shipping of my coffee. They also provide the backend for my website and host this using a reputable hoster. What should I be looking for in regards to security? They use Stripe for payment processing.
Okay. So basically, I would look for, first of all, two-factor authentication. Make sure you have the two-factor authentication in place. And that way, if someone can't get your password and just get in. Second, because it's all encompassing, I would see where their customer data is stored. First of all, is it stored in Canada? Secondly, how do they store the customer data? Is it encrypted? That's extremely important. Who has access to this data? Because if they get hacked, how can a hacker get this data and how can it affect you? Secondly, Stripe's really good too. They're PCI DSS compliant, but I would look at their connectivity between them, make sure that all the connectivity with the third party between them and the credit card processing is done properly.
Perfect.
That's what I would focus on.
Thank you. And lots of thank yous for a very informative presentation. Yes, you have the QR code. I put the link in the chat box, and then the recording will also go back on to the YouTube channel if you need to review. And then please do get hold of Andrew as well. He's on, definitely can help you as a small business. Andrew, thank you so much for your presentation today. Thank you, everyone. Look forward to seeing you on the next session. Have a good day.
No problem. Thank you, everyone. If you need to reach out, feel free to reach out. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Take care, Andrew. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.